What a quality show.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless.
We can't say enough nice things about it because everybody already has.
Yeah.
Someone left an open Coke can by the bar?
Yeah, that's me.
Okay.
I'll get to it in a moment.
Yeah,
Give him some time.
I'll cross that bridge when I get there.
Cross that bridge when we get there, Chief. Oh, sorry about that. Just pulling out to get a bit more slack there and canceling out.
That was almost bad. Almost.
These cables need to be about a foot longer, but what do I know?
All right, let's see.
Hey, Nacho.
Hola.
I think we're on the pre-show, technically. Oh, we could probably adjust the camera given the two of us are clumped over here, but I'm sure Jake is going to shift over in a little bit.
Yeah. No, I can see like a wisp of my hair.
That's fair.
Just, like it's just kind of dangling in the frame. Doing a bit of the dangle.
Wait, is this right after a free weekend?
I think this is the free weekend.
Let's double check our audio.
Well, hang on. First, I need to find our thing, and then we'll double check. I need to find her. Need it. There it is. And now we are live.
Excellent. Good to see you all today.
Sweet. Let's double check our audio because, courtesy of the last free weekend, we had
Just losing an entire show.
Couldn't hurt.
Let's see.
Excellent. Oh, we are
perfect.
definitely
We
live.
have the audio.
Good.
We are Gucci.
Nobody goofed. Nobody touched buttons they weren't supposed to touch.
Dave doesn't have to get mad at anybody this week. Hopefully.
Hopefully. Let's do a little bit of the sharing.
Let's see if... There got to be some way to tighten this since I don't have channel locks on me.
Channel locks. So useful, but you never have them when you're in there.
Yeah, no, one of my buddies ended up snagging both sets I had in my truck.
What did
So yeah, he has 2 sets of my channel locks.
What a jerk.
What did
Oh,
And I have needle nose pliers that I could use for it, but I didn't grab those pre-show.
Ah, well.
So hopefully my audio's here, or audio's good here. Because I have ye old droopy mic.
The HVAC has never been so loud. It's
Well.
poison gas. It's sarin gas.
Let's hope nobody can hear that.
Okay, I'm done.
Our pre-show today is surprisingly boring. Sorry about that, guys.
Well, I got to imitate HVAC, so...
Isn't that just a regular Tuesday night for you?
Yeah.
Just sitting there in your room imitating HVAC?
Yeah. Just every day. It's my favorite pastime. Just sitting there.
All right, well.
Then my parents stomp on the floor, and they're like, shut up.
Let me just close. Is this door already closed? It's closed. Okay.
It is
I thought it was
closed.
slightly open, but it's not.
Encoders are on. The mics are live.
Excellent.
I'm playing the fight song and I'm getting my drink.
Hi, and welcome to the 3DMs podcast.
Joined
I'm
as
not-
usual by...
I'm Nacho. This is Jake.
I'm Paul.
And Jake decided to step out as the fight song ended, so I'm stealing his thunder right now.
You know what the worst part was I was so ready just to do it. Like I was just about to do it with no mic on my head. I've done it a million times. And yeah, you did it. You took that moment from me, Nacho.
Yeah, it feels good. Feels real good.
I bet it does.
I'm
Courtesy
hearing that
of the content of today's episode, I had to steal this thunder from you.
I'm hearing that our sound is coming through just fine, so let's have at it then.
I suppose. Welcome to the 3DMs podcast, everybody. I'm Jake, joined as usual by Paul and Nacho, because I just have to do it so I feel correct. And this week, we are going to be talking about a little bit of life, mostly death, and one of our favorite things in the world, the Henderson scale of plot derailment, which is just an absolute delight. So, guys, let's talk about death.
Gee, I didn't know we'd be talking about something so deep today. I mean,
I know.
I need to get my... Oh, you're talking about player death.
Wait,
Okay.
Yes.
yeah, okay.
Yes.
I thought I wasn't edgy enough for today.
No, but I'm the only one who got the memo to wear black. Posers.
I like green.
I like green.
Yeah, no, I'm
It's the
not.
color
I'm not
of the
edgy
leaves.
enough for today's episode.
Anywho, ballyhooing. So, let's just launch right in because we've got a pretty thick show. We'll do all our plugs and other stuff that we have to do at the end. Death and you.
How to react when a player dies.
A brief history of Thanatology. So, obviously, the best part of playing D&D is you get to sit around a table with your buddies. You get to have some snacks, some Cheetos, some Mountain Dew, some adult beverages, if that's
And you
how your
get to
table rolls.
murder some goblins.
And you get to murder the heck out of some gerblins. But every now and again, something murders you.
Sometimes the goblins get you.
And you just got to make a little bit of peace with that. So before we get into, just like little DM tips and, I guess overall like table manner for when a unexpected death has occurred.
As opposed to an expected death where you probably have a big dramatic scene planned.
Yes. Let's do a brief history of Thanatology with Professor Paul. Prof P, lay it on me.
Well, back in OD&D, they expected you to go to Chainmail for rules on death. But because I assume none of you has a copy of Chainmail cracked open right now, I'm going to sum it up briefly for you. When you reached 0 hit points, you were dead. That was it. You reached 0 hit points, you were gone.
DED dead.
Yeah.
Just as Gygax intended. Pretty
Yes.
straightforward. You're dead.
And of course, in first edition, they clarified those rules and they added an optional rule where you could survive to negative 10 hit points on death's door, which second edition would, of course, expunge upon, where you could be dying and you'd be bleeding out on the floor and you'd lose a hit point every round, as everyone who's played third edition I'm sure remembers. But if you reached, I believe it was below 6 hit points, you'd suffer some sort of major physical injury. Like you'd lose an arm or something if you went a negative 6 or below.
Excellent.
And even healing you would put you into a coma for 60 minutes, which is pretty rough, but that's the old ones. The newer ones include third edition, where you can go down to negative 10 hit points before you die, and any healing will stabilize you so you no longer bleed to death.
Pretty standard.
And of course, in fourth edition, you'd make a saving throw every round and accumulate death saves, where anything over a 10 would mean that you didn't continue dying. And if you got a 9 or below, you'd accumulate a death save. And if you got 3 or more, you were dead. That was it.
Yes. And also for 4th edition, too, if you, while you were down and you were getting kicked or stabbed or exploded, you also received a, how far could you go until you died?
I believe it was half
your maximum
hit
hit
point
points.
maximum.
To your bloodied negative value.
Yes. Which are personally the rules that I like to use in my house. But that's
And then you
me.
just die if you reach that.
Yeah, and then you just die. And then now 5th edition, we just have death saves.
Yep.
Which
There's no such thing as negative hit points, but if you take extra damage to equal your maximum hit points, you instantly die. This almost never happens unless you're like first level and you get splatted by an ogre or you fall 700 feet or a dragon just chomps you and critically hits.
yeah, so let's go over, a few of the
One fun bit of trivia.
Yeah,
Third
yeah.
edition, being dead did not actually cause any mechanical penalties.
Yeah,
let's just
we're having mic placement problems today, so we apologize for
Yeah,
that
sorry
if any of our audio gets all screwy.
Yeah. So let's go over a few little things that we get. with 3rd and 5th edition, things that have been lost, things that have been gained, so on and so forth. First of all, how does everybody feel about 5th edition, the death saving throw system?
I think it's fine. It does kind of throw me for a loop because I'm so used to negative hit points.
Me too.
But I think it's ultimately probably a more fair system because ultimately the goal is that if a character is saved on the brink of death, they can get back into the fight pretty quickly. And that's just for ease of play because a lot of games, like video games, do something like that with, for example, XCOM or Darkest Dungeon or similar. But those tend to imply that you should have a wide variety of characters you can pick and choose from.
Yes.
You only have the player characters in D&D.
All I know is that in 5th edition, like when I was running 3.5 in Pathfinder, like I usually advise the keep an extra character ready to go just in case. 5th edition, I don't have that problem because it's actually kind of hard to kill people in 5th edition unless you're really...
It's hard to unintentionally kill people because basically they need to be getting beaten on while on the ground, and usually a monster has better things to do than just beat a person who's currently bleeding and unconscious on the ground.
That being said, and we'll get more into this, but it can make for a deliciously dramatic moment. Now, I think there's one other thing, and I just wanted to gauge feelings on this because we were talking about this on for prep for the show, and we said save it for the show. 3rd edition did have one extra rule for dying, and that was the mass damage rule.
Yes, I believe you took more than 50 damage in a single attack, you had to make a Constitution save or instantly die.
Which is brutal.
Especially in higher levels where 50 damage can be an opening volley.
Yeah, it can be. I do remember when we were playing.
I thought it was higher than 50, but
I know.
Again, I haven't played that edition in a while.
I would need to crack open the DMG, but I'm pretty sure it's 50
Yeah, we'd
damage.
have to double check the rules. I just remember that I was so happy as my paladin when I got my constitution high enough that I could not fail the mass damage save, so I could be the best. I could be the tankiest boy that ever tanked. I did. What you got? 80 damage? It's fine, Chief. Let's roll with these punches.
Hold on. Okay, let's go back to this.
Yeah. So, on to segment number 1 of dying. Somebody fucked up.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll just assume it's a pretty regular session. We'll say you play on Tuesdays because that's a good night for everybody to get together. You got the snacks, you got the chips, everybody's hanging out, and that's when it happens.
Somebody takes a big old critical and they're already at half hit points, and then they just drop.
And nobody's able to get over in time to stabilize, or the monsters are played intelligently and prevent, or the enemies are prevent you from doing.
Yeah, they're not going to beat you when there's somebody else currently trying to stab you, but they're going to prevent them from getting you to get you up.
And your death saving throws don't save, even though you have a higher statistical percent chance of surviving. And the moment happens. You dead. So, just breaking down how this normally goes, although I feel like a lot of you have already had to deal with this at least once. First thing that normally happens immediately after somebody dies, there is a sense of shock around the table. A good example of this was the last time I killed a player character was my ex-girlfriend, and this was not the reason we broke up, but her character died, in a combat, and it was a pretty fair death. And like the second she died, she failed that last saving throw. Like, I hadn't planned on killing anybody that day, but the room just got real quiet and real tense because this was a brand new campaign, and like this was just like their first like kind of real test.
And someone's dead.
And someone's already dead, and they were like, oh shit.
We didn't even dip our toes in the water yet.
Yeah, and everybody else was like already getting really close to dead, and it all kind of hit the entire party at the same time, like, oh shit.
This is no place for the weak or the foolhardy.
Yep.
Except my character in that game, I was the jerk, so I was hiding out away from the combat, just like, haha.
Some say
my
a jerk,
peons are doing
some
this.
say an opportunist. But, moving on, it's hilarious. So you can think whatever you want about the 5 stages of grief, but I have often experienced that with people who are new to D&D.
They speed run it.
They speed run the 5 stages of grief. Any vet, any old-timey sea salt of a D&D player is just going to be like, yep, shake it off, make a new character. All right, yep, death happens. All right, we're good. But for the most part, people who are newer to the hobby, that seeing someone die in game is kind of traumatic.
As it should be, honestly. We'll talk more about that in a moment.
Yeah. And they hit the 5 stages of grief really fast. They feel what are they really quick? They're
denial.
Yeah, first there's denial,
Anger,
bargaining,
depression, acceptance, I believe.
depression, and then acceptance. Yeah, somewhere in that order. But they speed run those really fast. Like I've seen players who just had a character die. Like, no, you killed me. You killed.
No. I was just in this combat.
I believe it was Tim who physically tried to take his sheet away from you when you took it from him.
Yes. When I killed one of my newer players, he's not a new player anymore, but when
he was a young lad, a new player.
Yeah, when he was brand new to the game,
bright and starry eyed.
Yeah, we'd been playing for about 3 months, and I killed his character, and I took his sheet because I was going to burn his sheet. Something I like to do in person games, just give the sheet a little, put on my heart.
Send off.
Put my heart will go on, a little Celine Dion, and, just burn that bitch. And I ran outside, and I said, everyone come with me, and I was going to light it. I was standing out on his porch, and then I feel Tim's gangly ass jump on my back and start reaching for the sheet. Like, no, you can't burn it. No, don't burn it.
You can't do this.
And so I let him keep the sheet because, frankly, the fact that he was willing to attack before it said enough. But
the emotional impact was there.
The emotional impact was there. So the first thing that usually happens is a sense of shock. And that sometimes can happen to you as a DM as well, because
I wasn't planning to kill anyone tonight.
I looked at my notes. Murdering somebody was not in my intent. A challenge was, sure, but...
As we all know, every day when a DM wakes up, they brush their teeth and think about how many player characters they're going to kill today. Usually it's 0, but sometimes it's not.
Real quick, we have a comment from Dan.
Friend of the show, Dan.
So,
come on, read it on.
So his demented DM mind, he found it entertaining when a deity intervene and say, "You're too entertaining to die." Which
That's fair.
I wonder if that means, hey, I'm going to make you my little peon over here, or I'm just going to let the chicanery keep going. I would like some clarification from you.
But
regardless,
moving on.
That could go either way.
So, as a DM, you just had a player die. Your immediate first thought after, okay, wasn't actually trying to do that today. That was supposed to be 2 weeks from now.
Whoops. How do I make this work?
Is you have to go by the old vacation rule of location, 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 and just change a couple of those locations to monsters and circumstance. But location, monster, circumstance. So, let's say you're in the woods. Let's say it's an owlbear, my favorite monster in the book, just to put in a campaign because they're fun. They
ask a lot of questions about wizards in your setting.
Yeah, they just add a bunch of really dumb questions, and they're usually good for shock and awe. I adore owlbears. An owlbear kills an adventurer in the woods.
Does it make a sound?
And nobody's around to see it.
Actually, I had that happen in a game, and nobody knew what happened to that player. He went off to go hunting by himself. Owlbear killed him. Never seen him again. Awkward.
Notoriously dangerous creature.
Sorry, Andrew. Moving on. If that death happens, well, it's a tragic accident, and I'm sure the owlbear will be slain, by the rest of the party, and there'll be a funeral pyre or whatever burial rites want to be observed. But then going forward,
do people only go out in groups now?
Yeah, do people travel together? Do they reinforce the don't split the party rule harder? Do you reinforce that as a DM? But that's just if you die to a monster. If we get into the more heavy, this was a plot line thing, so say you were fighting a group of giants as a side plot. Let's say there's a village. I'm just pulling all of this out of my butt. Let's say there's a village, and the village was under attack by a coalition of hill giants and ogres that were working together because they
hate people.
They did not like the fact that this village had fuchsia doors. Okay? They're really offended by fuchsia. And
It's an offensive color in the ogre religion.
You just thought this would be a fun way to, do something this week, and just do this ogre hill giant thing. And you have a player die. Well, suddenly you have to go, you got to think to yourself as a DM, all right, well, they're going to have a bigger vendetta now, and you have to invest maybe a bit more story resource into
why they hate fuchsia doors.
Why they hate fuchsia doors. Suddenly this can develop a plot line. There is a good part to having a character die for the most part. Usually there is a silver lining that can be gleaned from this. Normally it is the hatred of something that's severe. We talked about this again for show prep, and we found out that the only thing that players hate more than like one of their
own dying,
one of their brothers in arms dying,
the only thing that'll
combat
incite them more
is
having their
shit
things stolen from them.
Yeah, you take a group of adventurers' stuff, like their magic stuff and their money, the rage is palpable.
I had 15 gold there. I'm burning your village to the ground now.
But you have to be able to flow with the response, and you have to now suddenly accept what could be a shift in direction for your party. Your party's true north might change if you've had the Skeletor type of villain who just pops up every now and goes, ha, and then fades back into the distance. Suddenly, they're not really going to care so much about stopping him as
killing those ogres and their damn fuchsia doors.
Possibly inciting a fuchsia door genocide.
I'm going to put a fuchsia door on every hill giant's dead body.
I don't know why we've. Okay,
no, you're the one that said it.
I know. We're going too deep down this rabbit hole.
You opened these floodgates.
Yes, I did.
Regardless, let's move on here.
Are they fuchsia?
They're just bright pink. Regardless.
But you have to be ready to flow with an adjustment to your plot. Sorry, the whole thing is making me laugh a lot. And then that brings us to the last kind. Did they actually die in combat with like somebody you had threaded as a main NPC, villainous NPC, which is easily the most helpful. Like if you got to kill somebody, it's got to be with somebody who's directly
if it's like the big bad directly killing one of your players, that's about as good as you can hope for as far as unintentional deaths go.
It's like, sweet, I don't have to come up with a new side plot.
I don't have to come up for a reason why they hate this guy. No, they just hate this guy to begin with.
Hey, Patrick, thanks for finding our podcast, by the way, bud. Moving on. If you have the event, if you're so fortuitous that in one of your combats where a lieutenant or somebody who you can easily, like, from behind...
Lay up as a bad guy.
As a bad guy, or somebody who can be related to your bad guy. Let's say suddenly these giants who hate fuchsia,
they're under the command.
They're under, guess what? They just became under the command of your big bad Skeletor guy, and, you can relate that and weave that in all very nicely and keep that all going forward. And I think that's pretty much it on just how you can adapt to the situation. But we're gonna cover a bit more on like how to deal with the death in the moment. But let's talk about death itself. Let's get philosopher majory up in this bitch. Shan't we?
What does death mean? I think it means when you stop moving and you stop breathing.
I think you stop breathing and you stop moving and your brain stops functioning and the heart stops doing the thumpity. Wouldn't it be bad if I gave myself an arrhythmia doing that?
Regardless.
It'd be really douchey, but I would laugh.
I wouldn't even be mad.
I would be a little mad, but I wouldn't be that mad.
With my dying breath.
That was pretty funny.
That was okay. So.
Death
in your setting.
The final frontier.
Yes. So in Forgotten Realms, death is actually kind of a, forgive my language, but kind of a cheap bitch. Death doesn't really stick. It's kind of like Marvel and DC Comics.
I believe we made a joke, or everyone has made this joke about the revolving door of death, where high-level adventurers would rarely stay dead for more than maybe a session.
Yeah, it gets to a point where, just the most powerful, there is always a way out of death for the most powerful adventurer.
Hey, you just got decapitated. Wait, hold on.
I'm back.
I'm better now.
Don't you mean decaffeinated?
Oof,
that too.
That'd be rougher than decapitated at high levels.
But in Forgotten Realms, in the standard D&D setting that we now have for 5th edition, just dying is
it ain't that bad.
It's bad, but it's not that bad.
If at about 8th level, death becomes not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Hold on. Let's just revive them real quick.
If you've got a cleric. And Paul, drop the list of, if you could, the spells in 5th edition that can successfully bring somebody back to life.
I'm sure somebody's going to tell me there's a spell in some obscure sub-book I missed, but the spells in the core book that can bring somebody back to life, or bring someone back to life, so to speak, are Revivify, Raise Dead, Resurrect, Reincarnate, True Resurrection, and Clone. The last of these is not like the others, but we'll get to that in a moment. So basically the difference between Revivify, Raise Dead, Resurrect, and True Resurrection are how long has the character been dead? Revivify only works if they died less than a minute ago.
Revivify is the shock paddles.
It's
of
the
reviving.
CPR reviving, and it's the one that most people probably have the least problems with, because it's a lot easier to say, put the soul back in the body of somebody who just died than it is to bring somebody back who's been dead for 200 years.
Yeah. And Revivify is, Paul and I had this conversation when we were talking about putting the show together. Revivify is a hilarious spell in the fact that it actually, like, if you are a DM who does not play this as simulation, but you just kind of go like, yeah, no, you just kind of do the spell. Revivify has, like, I think the steepest component price out of any 3rd level spell in the game.
It's 100 diamonds. Well,
No, it's 100 G. It's a diamond worth 100 G.
yeah, it's 100 gold worth of diamonds, whether it be dust or a single diamond or whatever.
Yeah, that is, for a 3rd level party, that's still actually a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a decent chunk of
That's
change.
that's a pretty solid investment.
Also, you have to have it on hand. It's not like you got 100 gold worth of diamonds in the bank, because unless you can run to the bank in a minute, you're not bringing them back with Revivify.
Hold on. Let's just teleport real quick.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Let me burn all these components so that I can just use a quick low-level Revivify.
If you can, if you can teleport, then you've probably got access to the
Raise Dead,
Raise
which
the Dead
is,
or Resurrection.
I believe, 1 year. If they died within 1 year, you can spend 500 gold worth of diamonds to bring them back in exchange for them suffering some pretty heavy penalties for the next 4 long rests, which is, it's not bad. Reincarnate has not that many problems to it, but Reincarnate is
The
on a
funniest.
a whole other level of silly nonsense. Like, at least in this edition, the only things you can be reincarnated into are character races in the player's handbook.
Nacho,
But
you had told us about a.
yeah, so one of the DMs I played with, he had completely homebrewed his reincarnation table. So he had a couple different D100 charts. I think he had...
You said something about a dragon table, a player race
he
table.
had 6 or 8 of them. I don't remember how many, but he had one table where it was pretty much all dragons, one table that was all character races, one table that was all just random little forest critters, and then the other tables were all mixed up. So he'd roll one die to figure out
Which table it'd be
which
on
table
first.
he's going on to, and then rolled that. And our rogue, he got reincarnated as a chicken. The ranger, who may or may not be based on Link,
Had a
was-
paralyzing fear of chickens.
was
That's
Definitely a-
why I didn't catch that reference earlier, because I don't play Zelda.
was deathly afraid of chickens, and the rogue immediately died a second time and got set on fire, and they said, yeah, no, we're done.
See, a reincarnate has some interesting
Really
side
quick, Paul,
effects.
just to step in
Go
really
on,
quick.
I'm
We had a comment from a Dylan Carpenter, and his
Dylan.
question was, do you let players use the gold in place of the diamond or the other costs? Now, for me, and we're going to launch into this whole charade in a minute, I actually don't allow resurrection spells in my campaign. I like my death to be permanent, but...
I do not allow that because I think they need to have the foresight necessary to bring diamonds for Revivify.
Yeah, if I'm
or
planning
acquire.
on casting Revivify and I'm playing in a simulation in this game, I'm gonna have that big ass diamond in my pocket.
The Hope Diamond, just
Yeah,
sitting
just
there.
the Hope Diamond, just chilling out, just being like, "Hey, I'm gonna use this to bring people back. I take care of my people."
just chunks of it.
It's like, for me, if it's a brand new party, then yeah, I'll let them use the gold in place of it. But if there are people that have been playing for a while,
They should know to bring.
no,
some
they're
diamonds.
going to need their components.
Yeah, Paul. Back to the reincarnate rules. that are
Reincarnate
fascinating.
is, I believe, the only spell other than True Resurrection, which is a 9th level spell that revives people without any significant penalty, other than having your race randomly changed to one of the player's handbook races. And this can cause some problems, though, because your class features are going to change around. I'm not sure if your characteristics change around. It doesn't mention that. But Raise Dead and Resurrection both require your target to take a massive penalty to all of their skill checks and ability rolls.
Neat.
It's one of the very few numerical penalties rather than advantage or disadvantage. You just take -4 to all your rolls.
Yeah.
Though it does make sense considering, hey, yeah, you've been dead for a while.
It says that it's a bit of an ordeal, to put it lightly.
I got better.
And True Resurrection, of course, requires an absolutely absurd amount of money, but just brings you back instantly, doesn't even need your body.
Yeah. How much money? Because
25,000 gold worth of diamonds.
Good Lord, that's a lot of money.
Yes. As I believe I mentioned in the car, it is a king's ransom worth of money, and if you can cast it, well, you deserve to be able to bring them back.
Yeah. So, moving on to the next bit, though, so there's obviously, this creates this great divine ecology now, because except for Clone,
Which we're going to get to in a moment.
which is a necromantic spell, the rest of these are all divine spells. And this creates, you have to think about these spells and your divine ecology and how your afterlife also works. So let's say you use these spells. And so you got Revivify, so that person's only been dead for 30 seconds until the cleric goes, clear! That's exactly how I'd do it if I had Revivify in my game as a spell. That's exactly how it would be. Lightning on the hands. And
Well, I see it as more of a... What was the wrestler's name? Tajiri? Who would spit the stuff in their faces?
Yeah.
With the diamond dust just... just spit
Smelling salts worth of diamond dust, 100 gold of diamonds.
Just spit it in their face, and you're alive.
Stop putting that diamond shit in my face.
that's great.
It's sharp, it burns.
Well, don't die next time.
But you have to, now consider your divine ecology. Because other than Revivify...
There's pretty much Clone outside of that, which is the only non-divine spells I believe you said, and we're
Yeah.
going to talk about that in a moment. But sorry, go on. You said other than Revivify, all these involve pulling somebody back.
pulling back through the veil, from the veil of death. They're going to the afterlife, and then they're coming back. And as a DM, this is actually a really cool moment as a DM to flex. If you're working a homebrew campaign setting, you can flex a lot of really cool creative muscle. What do they remember? What don't they remember? Is their memory spotty at best? Do they have a very clear
Where do souls
recollection of
go
what
when they die?
Yeah. Where do you go when you die, and who do you meet on the way there?
I haven't had to have this problem yet with one of my games because nobody in my current Friday game can stay dead for any serious period of time. So,
Well, you need to work on that, Paul.
well, one of them is a revenant, and the other just changes bodies when he dies.
Oh,
So,
that's lurky.
Bag of devouring.
But
Ted the Bug will be fine.
anyways, for my setting, for example, because I have done the thing where gods will allow certain people back to life for certain reasons, or revenant status, and we'll get to revenants in a moment. But when it comes to my characters or people dying in my game, I usually describe to them, I pull them aside and I describe how my afterlife works, which is there are a few gates to the, to where judgment occurs, and your spirit has to physically walk its ass there. And sometimes
Well,
spirits
for a given definition of physically, of course.
yeah, they have to walk there, but of course, you don't get tired, you don't need to eat, you don't need to sleep, it's just a real long walk. It can take you some time before you get sent on to the afterlife, but that's also how I get ghosts. That's how I've kind of extrapolated that for my game. But for everybody else, it can be a little bit different. But for me, once they get beyond the veil, only, if I were to allow like a
Literal
resurrection spell,
divine intervention.
yeah,
is gonna save them.
they're not getting back across. Once you're on the other side, you're not getting back across for me. But that's my game. If in your game you want it, like when people die, like they, you can do something really cool with like, the ferryman of the river Styx. Like,
Yeah, I believe I did that to you specifically. Is
Yeah.
You sail down the river Styx, and once you pass beyond judgment, you're not coming back.
You and I think very alike, though.
Admittedly, it can take a long time because there's a huge line.
It's
but
a big river in there. Yeah,
there's a lot of people waiting for judgment.
people like to die.
You can
People
only
are pretty good at
Yeah,
it.
you can only fit so many people on the ferry.
Also, you can only judge one person at a time. God, these gods need to be more efficient.
Yeah, I know, right?
Bureaucracy at its
I
best.
didn't die just to stand in queue. Damn it. Oh, hello.
I believe we have a
got
comment.
Yeah, we got a couple of comments we got to catch up in here for. So first, we got Dan, friend of the
back,
show.
Dan.
Dan, input on using the D4 or D6 as a permanent loss in a random stat after being resurrected. I think that depends on if something...
How hardcore you're going.
A, how hardcore you're going, and B, if like you're really trying to play up that something was damaged. Like, for example, if Paladin got his head caved in by a bugbear, you know, like, and that's how he went down.
He might not be too smart after.
Yeah, I know. He might forgotten just how to do math.
I would say for spells that don't fully restore the body, like True Resurrection or Clone, I would consider doing that. But dying and having to pay for resurrection spell is already pretty traumatic on the players.
A little bit, yeah.
So I'm not sure if I would personally use that rule. That said, it's worth considering. I would put it in the compendium for things that could happen to you when you die.
Yes, I agree with that. I like that.
It's like
And-
it seems harsh, but it would make sense.
It would make sense. Yeah, it depends on how hardcore your setting is. And then the other comment we have is by Drew Hallam. I hope I said that right. I allowed a character to be resurrected by the local cleric that the party brought them to, but they were brought back by God's grace. Their alignment was now that of that God.
I believe we're going to talk about that in a moment here, but we could skip ahead and talk about that right now if you wanted.
So just finishing up on Beyond the Veil. Any cool little things you guys can think to add, like just like stuff maybe some players haven't thought about?
A better question is what happens beyond the veil common knowledge? If people get brought back frequently, surely somebody's gone to explore beyond the veil and bring back what they know.
See, for me, I don't really give them memories of what happens beyond the veil, but they may suffer like visions or some other little
Horrible nightmares.
some kind of fluff perk that may build into a story element.
That makes sense. I'm just thinking if people do remember what happens, and you have to consider that somebody's probably tried to map the afterlife.
Yes.
People are dumb like that.
So, and Drew had a follow-up on that. The character who now had a brand new shiny alignment used to be a chaotic...
Neutral evil rogue.
a neutral evil rogue.
And now they're probably... They got a new lease on life.
The nicest guy.
Yeah, keep them to that alignment.
Keep them there.
It'll be
Scary
funnier
stuff.
that way.
Yes. So,
We trained him wrong as a joke.
let's cover a couple of things we've been wanting to cover, though. Clone, Revenants, and what was the final one, Paul?
Well, you've got the show flow, but I believe we're also going to talk about things that could specifically happen to you when you were brought back.
Yes.
So Clone is a interesting spell because it's the only non-wish spell that can revive somebody in arcane magic. It also requires a lot of prep time and a lot of prep energy.
Yes. Clone is one of my favorite spells in the game just for exactly how, shall we say, forward-thinking you have to be and a lot of the implication that can be done with it.
For Clone to work, you need a 2,000 gold piece container that can hold a medium creature, such as a huge urn, a coffin, a mud-filled cyst in the ground, or a crystal container, all of which must be filled with salt water. On top of that, you need a diamond worth 1,000 gold and 1 cubic inch of flesh of the creature to be cloned. And that's interesting because 1 cubic inch of flesh is a lot of meat to carve off yourself.
It's literally, by our rough guesstimation,
a pound of flesh.
about a pound of flesh.
It's pretty painful.
This spell is, like, we talked about it in the car, but, oh, God, this spell is such a, it's a good storytelling
It's a
setup.
discount phylactery if you don't want to be a complete jerk.
Yeah, if you don't want to go full lich, you can go clone, and, it's a half-ass, it's a diet phylactery. But it hurts
you
more.
are losing
It's also
weight.
interesting because it's one of the very few ways to overcome aging because you can have the clone be younger.
Yeah. There's so much, why I love that spell so much is there's just so much great storytelling potential with it because...
First of all, it's a lot harder to hide than a phylactery, and it's a lot less indestructible.
Yeah, And second of all, there is just all this great build up and like changing of things. And it's a spell that everybody forgets exists. Like everyone's like, oh, clone, neat, you know. But then when it comes back up, woof.
It's a good spell. I like it. It's also, I believe, one of the very few resurrection spells that Jake actually allows in his setting because it requires so much forethought.
It requires someone. Yeah, you can't just be like, oh, really quick, let me just pop a clone spell. No.
You have to have planned this like a month in advance,
Yeah.
at least.
And then, since I'm a little bit rusty on it, do you have to haul that coffin around with you, or
No.
can you just stash it anywhere?
If at any point you die, you climb out of the jar that you put yourself in.
And there's no max range on this?
No, at least I believe not. Let me double check just to make sure. Nope. At any time after the clone matures, if the original soul dies, its soul transfers to the clone, providing the soul is free and willing to return.
It's a great spell.
It does take 120 days to prepare, though.
But let's talk about Revenants.
Revenants. You got unfinished business?
The other answer to your dead problem, other than just the resurrection spells. And one of my favorite things in the game, because a well-played Revenant is a excellent offering to a player character who just had a character die and they're not ready to move on from that character. When as we talked about earlier, my friend Tim, his character died. You know, we had that whole little kerfuffle over it. That's one of the things we sat down. We went out for drinks and we sat down to talk about his new character because he was a little torn. He didn't know what he wanted to do, and you know, the idea of a Revenant came back up. Unfinished business.
If your unfinished business is so strong that you're not going to go to judgment, you can become a Revenant.
Yeah, you can skip ghosting and you become a Revenant, which
You get them sweet, sweet ghost powers.
them sweet, sweet ghost powers. Well, you
You are corporeal, if I recall.
yeah, you are a physical entity, and you have. So, by the way, you can get the rules for Revenant in an Unearthed Arcana, which is it's Death and Decay or something like that. It's something along those lines.
Well, we'll drop a link for it.
I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure it was the one that had the Grave Domain Cleric before that became
A
in
thing.
the book. Yeah.
we were just called out, by the way. A cubic inch of flesh is apparently does not weigh a pound.
Doesn't? Oh, okay, well.
I thought it seemed off, but I'm not a mather,
Well,
so...
I was
Anyone
trying to be
So-
poetic and
so,
quote.
Thank you, Carrie.
I was trying to quote Shakespeare. You know, whatever.
We'll have to. We'll run the official math when we get home. But it's a lot.
It's a It's not something you do easily. Ooh.
If you can do math on the on the weight of a cubic inch of flesh, we would appreciate it because we don't math too well.
That's a weird Wolfram.
Just
Alpha
as
calculator.
somebody who works in construction, I know a cubic inch of, if I were to just take it from the stretchy flesh on my back, be a lot of flesh on my back. But back to what we were talking about. Revenants have a lot of great powers. They're very fun character-wise in that they are driven. They have to do one very specific goal.
And then they just sort of dissipate after that goal is
And then,
complete.
yeah, and then once that goal is completed, they just kind of die. But they have a lot of great built-in powers. We don't have the sheet in front of us, but from the top of my nog, it's stuff like getting, you have a constant idea of where your objective is. And it's like you get headaches if you're not chasing your objective. So role-playing a Revenant can be kind of fun. The thing that it makes me think of is the Master from Doctor Who, when David Tennant was Doctor, you know, just the constant in your head when you're not following your objective. That's good role-playing stuff. Also, they have the hilarious ability of being able to be completely murdered, destroyed, and blown up and having
Still come back.
not a single trace of their body left. And then just showing up a day later, just being like, yeah, that happened.
Yeah, dying ain't nobody got time for that.
That sucked. Let's try to avoid that.
Yeah, let's try to avoid that again. It's a good option for player characters who are still really attached to the character.
And B, have a very specific goal in mind.
Yes, you know, because if they're just like, I just want to, you know,
I want to be the richest man in the world isn't going to cut it, but I want to avenge my family. Well,
yeah, avenge the family or, you know, finish this adventure might seem a little vague, but if it's, you know,
if you have a very specific goal, like kill this lich,
yeah,
that would work.
then
Yeah.
it works.
And if you're not strong enough to kill said lich, but you're already there, just every day, just keep coming back, just keep harassing it until eventually you succeed,
One of these days.
You'll figure it out.
and just drive it crazy. how many times do I have to kill you? Well, we're on a 965 right now, so...
I estimate another 35 times.
So, yeah, let's keep going.
But beside all that, we should talk about what could happen if you aren't a Revenant and need to come back.
Ain't much. There really ain't much that you can do to come on back now, other than there's always ghost options, and more importantly, what's probably going to happen is you're probably going to have to make a new character.
Yeah. So how do you introduce a new character to the party?
What a conveniently well placed 5th level adventurer that happens to have the right amount of magical equipment that also just so happened to show up in this very dungeon we were in. Bless. I am so happy we have him here. It's always really complicated adding a new character to the mix.
It's less so if you're in a city, for example, where it'd be a reasonable thing to run across a appropriately powered adventurer. But in a dungeon or in a forest or in the wilderness, it can be difficult to reasonably add a new character because you don't want the player sitting on their hands, obviously,
and
for 2 sessions.
Also, it never feels good to hit the tropes either. Like, some things are just like super obvious, but sometimes you just kind of gotta do it because you have to get this player back in the game. Like, it never feels good to do the, oh, well, in the next 3 rooms of the dungeons, after you went through one room and another room, there was a conveniently very powerful adventurer tied up who had been going it alone and had somehow gotten this far.
This isn't Left 4 Dead. You're not going to find a random closet with an extra survivor in there.
But you can.
You could. I wouldn't blame you if you did. It's very expedient. But
What I generally do is I'll have a couple little side hooks where it's, okay, sweet, they're getting assistance here. Like, oh, you can't pass this.
Or you could do what I do and have a miscellaneous crowd of hangers-on for people to switch into the body to and instantly become super badasses when convenient.
Yeah.
It's one way to do it.
It's one way to do it. Obviously, so when a person has a character die, if they were, again, unless they're like the old sea salt of D&D players where they're just like, yep.
All right, I got my next one right here. Ready?
Yep, already ready for it. Yep. I know what I want to do. Yep. Okay, how are we going to tie this in? Okay.
Yeah, what level you put me at? Okay, sweet.
Let me just go in my binder here, pull out an appropriate character level. Here we go.
See you in 5 minutes.
Yeah,
okay,
there are those people. If you don't have one of those people who just died and you have a very new person, sometimes you're going to have to sit down and you're going to have a long conversation with them. Feelings can be hurt by a player death. And you're definitely going to have to sit there and like try to, again, constantly remind this person that this was not personal.
Yeah, nothing personal.
This was
sorry.
Nothing personal. I just killed the character you were emotionally invested in.
Yeah, you were
for
super,
months.
especially for, first-time players, especially, like, anytime you pop the cherry on killing a player, it's rough.
It sucks.
I still remember my first character death.
Tell us about it, Nacho.
I was a very young lad, and eventually I got my dad to run a little one-shot for me so I could
wet your feet a little?
First play Dungeons & Dragons as a very small child. I was a human fighter, don't remember what name I picked, but 10 to 15 minutes into starting in a tavern, I was dead because I started a bar fight.
Well, that's kind of your fault, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it was definitely my fault. And that's when I learned, hey, this isn't a video game where you just kill everything. You do have power limits.
You have to consider your options. So we could talk about specifically what's the difference between a character doing something dumb and getting killed and the dice just hating you and getting killed?
Yeah, that is definitely something we can cover.
So, for example, starting a random bar fight is a good way of you getting your own dumb self killed.
Yeah.
But getting accidentally crit 3 times in a row is not really your fault as much as spectacular bad luck.
Yeah, no, there are definitely times where, I look at DMs who just go, I do what the dice say, and I am a slave to the dice. They never call themselves a slave to the dice, but they are. But it's like, damn it, man, have a little bit of compassion.
Oh, no, I've fudged crits into regular hits.
Oh, that's a completely standard DM thing.
There have been a couple times where it's like, you know what?
You don't deserve to get crit 3 times in a row. This character is going somewhere, and having them die would just be tremendously inconvenient.
It's like,
that was just a regular hit.
Yeah, I rolled damage and the attack die at the same time because I just wanted to throw a bunch of dice and make them worried. And it's like, you know what? I'm going to call that a miss so I don't just immediately kill them.
But
still, you have to admit that there's some sense of danger to the players.
Yeah.
And sometimes that does mean killing them off.
Yeah.
For me, it's quite easy because I have 2 player characters who can take lethal blows and not actually die. But for other people, sometimes you are going to have to kill a character. And that's rough.
Oh, no, I murdered our bard because he decided to do a breaking and entering and pick fights and all that.
Well, that's his fault.
One-on-one combat with a fighter, and yeah.
Rip.
The party found out the next day, oh, there was a disturbance over here. Yep, we don't know that body. Let's leave town.
Not
All right.
remembered by anybody.
So we got about 14 minutes of show left, and we got 3 more topics to storm through.
Well, then let's storm through them.
So let's hop on through. So, first things first. The next step, obviously, after the players died, you've kind of figured out where things are going to go and how things are going to move on. You are going to have to play therapist to your party for a little bit, and you're also going to have to put some suggestions out there. It depends on how roleplay heavy you are, because some groups are just like, well, we're dungeon crawlers. He died. He knew what he signed up for. Moving on, chief. But a lot of people, especially in modern D&D, like to go for the storytelling experience. They like the expanded narrative.
Which I think is a great improvement on how old D&D worked.
Yeah, I agree.
Until the Grog nerds that.
But that brings us to the point of
What do you do about it?
Yeah. There's obviously, there's funerals, there's wakes, there's, a bajillion ways your players could,
Send off this character.
do the send-off, which is often very therapeutic. And if you've got a very close-knit of player characters, like it's a, you put on a little bit of Celine Dion and, you just kind of let it happen and just watch everybody just kind of like, yeah, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
We got in a bar fight this one time and he had my back. And we got this other bar fight and he also had my back. And the third bar fight he didn't
I
quite
do
have
find
my
it's
back.
important to impress on your players, too, when a death happens that,
The character is affected.
your character should be affected.
Unless
because
they got a heart of stone or are super jaded, they should probably be at least a little bit sad that somebody who had their back, metaphorically speaking and probably literally speaking, is dead.
even if in-game sitting at the table, like they rarely ever had conversations with each other. Maybe they just talked to each other a little bit when group conversations were happening. There's still a lot of dead space that needs to get filled, that would be filled by conversation in like non-occurring roleplay opportunities. For example, you're traveling 40 miles. You've got, about 2 or 3 days of, rough overland travel to cover. And
You
you're
were
just-
probably talking about stuff.
Yeah, you're just waving your magic wand as a DM and just saying, "Yep, you get there. We're going to roll some dice, see if anything happens." But the whole way, you're probably going to be having conversations. Think of your coworkers, think of other people like you're going to talk about stuff even if you don't talk much. You're going to have a decent understanding of who this person is, and you're going to be affected by that loss in some way. So try to
Impress upon your players that their characters, again, unless they're super jaded, probably have some sort of thought about this person who they were ride and die with is now dead.
Yeah, when Jake's character died, my cleric stole a small wooden boat, put his body on it, lit it on fire, pushed it out to sea, then proceeded to go back into that dungeon, kicking doors down, and the rest of the party's like, wait, no, we got to think about this tactically. No, my character's out for blood right now.
Oh,
I'm going to
I'm
kick
mad.
in this door. No, we want to do this.
It should be pointed out that we were the two ringers in a group of brand new players, and they're
Yeah.
like, "Well, no, we just shouldn't feel feelings." And it's like, this was our leader.
Yeah.
And that's
He
not me
dead.
shooting my horn. I was the leader of the group, and I died, and I made sure everybody got taken care of. And they all kind of took that note, and they were like, "Oh shit, you're right."
Again,
Oh no, we need to stop and we need to plan this all out. No, I'm gonna kick in the door.
But moving on.
we can also briefly talk, of course, about how quickly player characters get ride or die with each other, but we
Yeah.
could probably save that for another.
No, that's just kind of a hilarious joke. I've never seen Faster Friends in any other sort of fiction than tabletop RPGs.
People in a parties, I will die for this person literally 5 seconds after meeting them.
Now,
You ate dinner with us.
on to the next bit. we ain't got another show until 6, so we can probably run a little bit over today.
Well, let's try to avoid it if we can. But.
Yeah. So, making a new character. That is going to take a lot of finesse and gentle hand-holding and love. Depending on the person, because again, unless they're, as we've said a bajillion times, I already got my sheet ready. Normally, a person who has a character die, they're going to go through a lot of emotions. Sometimes they're going to be really mad. Sometimes they're going to be really heartbroken. Sometimes they're like, oh, but I was so excited to, this big plot thing we had planned. And as a DM, it does suck because when that person dies, you're just like, well,
tear out the sheet of notes, throw it away.
Yep.
Unless, of course, reviving is possible in your setting. But
yes. But, in the situations where it just can't happen and they have to make a new character, then you've got to work something out. Things I strongly advocate for. Spending alone time with that player, going out and, for me, I like going out and getting a couple of drinks with somebody, take them to a bar, we have a couple of cocktails, sit down, and be like, how do we want to do this? How do we want to make this right in the future? For other people, it might be like, hey, let's, go for a walk or go do this or, just some hobby where it's not the game and it's not on everybody's game time and you're not taking away from everybody else's time. You sit there and you just work with each other and you try to figure out how are we going to introduce a new character, what are we going to do different, and how do we tie him into the story? Because
how do we introduce this new guy, basically?
Yeah, one of the
to
funnest,
become ride or die with.
Yeah, one of the funnest challenges of being a DM is introducing that brand new character into the story without it feeling just like, well, here's your new party member, Kith.
There's Bob 2. Totally different from Bob 1.
Yeah, no, there are two methods. You could go the Beer Fest route when Landfill died, and I'm Landfill's twin brother, and he's already told me all about you guys, so, you could just call me Landfill, and we'll just do this.
He's better than Landfill in every way. Wow, amazing. Yeah, there's that method, or
you can come up with, hey, so let's say now you're trying to recruit help, or
set up the hiring table.
You can set up the hiring table. You can, if you're going against some evil lord or, whatever your political dynamic is or whatever the players are questing against, you can try to pull on some obscure lore you got set up, or, something kind of common where it's like, I've heard about what you guys are doing, yada, yada, yada.
I'm here to help because I just hate him so much.
Yeah. Like, we voted for the same president the last 4 elections, and we like all the same restaurants. I'd like to hang out.
That guy took my sweet roll.
Would you like to go do karate in the garage?
Would you like to go mug some bad guys? Take their stuff. Sure would.
All right.
Regardless.
On to the next and final bit about death, and then we're going to cover the Henderson table of
Plot derailment.
What happens when everybody goofed?
This is
Also
a
known
contentious
as
topic.
The total party kill.
TPK for short.
I have never had this actually happen to me. Oh, no, sorry. I have had it happen to me once, but it was more that half the party ran away in shame.
No, that's...
Half of them were dead, half of them ran away and were never seen again.
Huh. Bold. I've had 2 TPKs happen. One was a self-inflicted TPK, which
The best kind.
The party just savagely tore itself apart. It's what you get for running an evil campaign. It's how 90% of evil campaigns turn out, I think. They just all event like 2 sides form and then they just rip each other to shreds. So that happened, and then the result for that was just make a new game. But the other TPK was actually very interesting because with the other TPK, excuse me. With the other TPK, they died to a minion of the big bad. And that actually empowered the minion of the big bad in a way that he went and challenged his boss
For that position.
and he won. And he was kind of based on, if anybody's played Fallout New Vegas, it was kind of based on the relationship between Caesar and Lanius. And so Lanius showed up, took his boss's job, and then just kind of expedited the whole destruction of everything and being a brutal, ruthless monster of a leader. And then so the next game we did was set 25 years after that happened in this local region where everything was just miserable and shit. But it was great though, because they all had a built-in hatred of him and same players and stuff. And so they were just ready to go up there and, try to punch him in the face again.
So let's talk about what specifically you're supposed to do after TPK, because I often see a lot of people come on the Facebook group for Dungeons & Dragons 5th and just like, oh, I just killed my entire party. What's next?
What do?
As always, the answer is there's a lot of things you can do.
A lot of conjecture.
The big one, and the one that a lot of people is going to recommend, is send in the search team, find out what happened to them, create an entirely new party, and have them figure out what went wrong and try to put it right.
Not mad at that. I like that.
Another one is start a new campaign. Everyone's dead, Dave. Let's try again. Another one is the same thing, except the person who got the entire party killed, they're running now. Their game now.
Scary.
You break it, you bought it.
Nacho?
Yeah.
I see you have some ideas here.
Yeah, my personal favorite is if you have a good aligned party, hey, they go to the astral planes, and now they have to work out favor with a god to bring the party back. Like, yeah, you'll lose what you had on your actual body.
The reincarnations of the party later is
Yeah.
what you're saying?
And reincarnate them later. If they're evil, then, hey, you're going to have to work something out with the devil, and
It's not going to be pretty.
then, yeah, you're going to be paying it back down the road.
Yes.
More than what you got out of it.
Far more.
Probably a lot more.
It's a pretty full topic.
You're getting your lives back, so, yeah, it's going to be a pretty hefty price.
Yeah, it's a pretty full topic, and you can always do the adventures in the afterlife. It's like, oh well, we're finally to our final rest. Not yet, adventurers. Turns out we need you for another gig up here.
It turns out Mega Satan is after you now.
Things are getting pretty weird in the astral plane. All right, our last bit for today. If
everyone dies,
everyone dies, normally that's a pretty bad thing for your campaign. Judging how screwed your campaign is normally a very difficult thing. But wait, dear friends. There's been a table introduced a long time. It's been around for a long time.
at least 2008, probably older.
It's a fantastic piece of DMing equipment, and not enough people know about it. Sweet Mod Fado, if you could both share the stories of Old Man Henderson and the Henderson scale of plot derailment, please, into the chat. Thank you. So,
Assuming, of course, Fado's with us today. I can't really tell.
hoping. If not, we'll share them after the show. But here is what...
To sum up quickly, of course.
Yeah, to sum up briefly, because we've got limited-ish time. Old Man Henderson is the story, could be real, could be not real, of a player who got so peeved at their DM they made an impressively long backstory for a character in a Cult of Cthulhu game. What resulted from the shenanigans this character...
yes.
Or Call of Cthulhu.
Trail.
There's lots of cults involved,
Yes.
but regardless.
Yeah, Call of Cthulhu game. What ensued was basically the most revenge-tastic shenanigans that a player could put against a GM, and ultimately ended in the player beating the GM in a game where the players aren't really meant to win. And that is with a ridiculous character based solely on screwing his game.
That's the long and short of it.
Oh, and we have the rough weight of a cubic inch of flesh.
It is 0.021 pounds or 0.0342 ounces.
Huh. So you need a lot more cubic inches to be a
Thank
pound
you,
of
Carrie.
flesh.
Yes. Thank you, Gary. We look like idiots. Thank you.
The more you know.
You're right on the internet. We're all going to go crash the truck after this. You've won. So, back to Old
It's not
Man
gonna be
Henderson.
that bad.
Yeah, long story short, Old Man Henderson, the most over-the-top epic character ever created just to screw over a player's game, or a DM's game. The Old Man Henderson scale of plot derailment
Describes how badly the plot has been derailed by whatever event has happened.
Yes. Paul, do you have the chart up so you can briefly break it down for everybody?
I do not believe I do, and besides, it's quite long, I'm afraid. But I could tell you can find it on 1D4chan, which is completely different from 4chan. Don't be afraid of it.
Do
It's
not be
just,
afraid.
This one's innocent.
It's just a collation. I would not worry too much about it. There's negatives and positives, and if you go to 1, the complete plot has been derailed and nothing can be salvaged anymore. And any higher than that is just unseemly and impossible.
Except for one man who has entirely destroyed all of psionics and everything the DM wanted in his whole world. But that story's on there for you to read.
Indeed. Regardless, I believe that's our time for today.
Now we're going to go about 10 minutes. I want to get a little deeper into Henderson.
All right. It's fine with me. I'm actually not a huge fan of the scale because I believe it cheapens how plot impacts the games, but I was told I'd be covering it today. So.
Scale is best.
See?
Have you even read the story, man?
When you know how many points you get for destroying your DM's game,
See,
Why would you want to do this?
Because you see it as a poor tool to measure things, and Nacho sees it as an open invitation to challenge.
it's a challenge.
So, really quick.
Why do you think I'm playing a bard?
You know,
Come on,
it's
Jake.
like every week, Nacho, you just get closer and closer to getting thrown out of my game on this show.
Regardless.
Anyways, so let's talk about basically how the Henderson scale works. So the Henderson scale goes from good stuff to bad stuff. Let's talk about the negative Hendersons. A -9 Henderson has the hilarious effect of basically the action undertaken has solved every problem in the game's universe for every living and non-living thing in existence. You have somehow literally made the universe perfect.
I would not worry too much about that one. It's probably not going to happen.
A -2 Henderson is the action somehow set in motion by a chain of events that'll fix every problem previously thought of by the GM for all future campaigns, so much so that not even that guy can screw it up. And we all know what that guy means, that rude, annoying player. A -1 Henderson is the action has immediately solved the campaign in its entirety, the villain is vanquished, the disaster is averted, and the person in distress is saved. Gather your dice and character sheets, good game, everybody.
It's finger of deathing the big bad and him failing.
Yep.
You know how it is.
A negative 0.75 Henderson on the negative scale is an action undertaken has caused the party to be victorious in all plots whatsoever. Success is only a matter of time. 0.5 is they have solved the current plot and nearly solved the main subplot, and they also have a minutely positive effect on the main plot of the game universe as a whole outside of the party. And the 0.25 on the Henderson scale is the party has just solved a current problem in a way the GM had planned for.
And remember, those were negatives.
Yeah, so this is the good stuff. This is the good side of the Henderson scale. This is where we get to scary stuff. A null on the Henderson scale of plot
Has
derailment.
no effect on the plot as a whole.
Yep. A 0.25 Henderson. The action undertaken has derailed the current trains of thought of all party members and all party members present and involved in the current plot, and derailed the most minute of current subplots, but the game master can easily reroute the party and continue to the end of the main subplot.
Otherwise known as when people start talking about random stuff.
Talking about random stuff, or they just go out, like they get really fixated on a random NPC that you didn't plan on them to, and you're just like, all right, we can work around it. A 0.5. The action undertaken has totally derailed the current plot and has severely screwed with the main subplot, but only has a minor effect on the main plot and the universe outside your party. Really, though, they love that NPC.
A lot.
The action undertaken has totally derailed the main subplot and any underlying subplots and caused minor consequences to the universe as a whole, but the game master can still make it to the plot's end with some finagling.
Finesse, if you will.
Yes, that is a 0.75 on the Henderson scale.
Bring us to 1 then.
And 1, and this is where everything has gone wrong. I accidentally clicked on the rage, but it's actually a really appropriate article too, is total and complete plot derailment.
You can't get back on this plot anymore. It's gone.
It's the plot has been completely ruined by whatever actions the player has taken. Moving up, a 1.5 actually is the action undertaken has caused a total party kill.
Everyone's dead, Dave.
Everyone's dead, and it's somebody's fault. And 1.25 is a special notch on the Henderson scale that is achieved under certain conditions by a specific reaction by the GM. The action undertaken has derailed the entire plot, and rather than trying to make a new plot, the game master has just decided to kill everybody. Rocks fall, everybody dies. And we're going to skip the last couple because we'd like you to look up the stories that inspired this scale.
We can do better than just reading off an article to you guys while we
Yes.
sit here. So,
But a double Henderson is a Henderson so epic that you have single-handedly forced the DM running the game to never want to pick up a pad of paper or dice again.
Well done, you. You just lost your game, Master.
You have single-handedly crushed a man's spirit with whatever you've done and ruined the game. Highly advise looking the scale up because it actually... So I guess I sit in the middle between Nacho, where Nacho sees it as an open challenge, and where, Paul, you find it contentious. I do enjoy looking at it and then just kind of like rationalizing what I've seen, what my players have done, and going, okay, that's about where I sit. Okay. And then, helps me silver lining and, refocus and retool, and instead of just being like, God damn it, they love that NPC too much. I hate everything.
You got to adapt, improvise,
Yeah.
overcome.
But see, I kind of follow it moderately. Like, I take it as an
No,
open
you don't.
challenge, but
No, you
I'm
don't.
also just going the most roundabout way to accomplish things.
Sure. All right. Guys, that is our time for today. A couple of things really quick. We record out of the podcast studios.
Podcast Detroit.
We record out of the Podcast Detroit studios here at Podcast Detroit in the Royal Oak studio. If you're in the southeastern Michigan area and want to start your own podcast, go to podcastdetroit.com. Super easy to do, super cheap, very affordable, a lot of fun. If you enjoyed today's content, please go like our Facebook page, 3DM, facebook.com/3DMs podcast. Find us we're on iTunes and SoundCloud. We're basically everywhere except for Spotify, because Spotify is a little rude. And what did we learn today? Death can be terrible. There's always new solutions, and Nacho's a horrible liar.
We also learned the weight of a cubic inch of flesh.
Yeah, we did.
We did.
You're the best, Carrie.
I believe that's all then.
Seppuku will be in the parking lot. See y'all next week, but not really. We'll be dead. I'm Jake.
I'm Nacho.
I'm Paul.
Bye-bye, y'all.
See, like, I take a train that's winding down a
Wait,
mountain
wait,
to
wait,
the
wait, wait, wait,
station.